So for this hip mobility sequence, I'm going to lay myself down to start, making sure that I get into a good relaxed state to begin with. Now I'm going to slowly start to lift one of my legs up, and I'm going to grab it right around the knee so that I can start to pull my knee towards my chest. Now the big thing I want to think about here is I'm really trying to drop that femur down deeper into the hip socket. So I want to almost imagine that there's this wheel that's spinning towards my head as I come and pull in, and away from my head as I pull out, making sure that I try to keep my knee at least ever so slightly engaged. If I disengage it completely, I'm going to lose that connection to that femur. So from here, I'm pulling in, really trying to keep everything else relaxed, and imagining that wheel. As I pull in, the wheel starts to spin clockwise. As I pull out, the wheel spins counterclockwise. So you can see here, wheel spins this way as I come and pull in, wheel spins that way as I come and pull out. And all this is doing is it's going to make those hip mechanics a lot easier to access. So the big thing we want to think here is I'm not tucking my pelvis, I'm just thinking about that wheel connection. Now from here, I'm going to go into my hip circles. So what I want to start with a good connected position. I'm going to bring that leg up, and then I'm just going to take small little circles. Now the key here is to keep my lumbar spine connected to the floor. So I'm making sure that I'm not arching through my spine. I'm keeping my spine in a nice neutral position. I'm feeling that connection to my core as that leg moves. What will happen initially is that you may find that that front side of that hip starts to catch. If that happens, what we want to think about doing is we want to think about trying to drop that femur deeper down into the socket. So I'm going to extend my leg long, and I'm going to do the same thing in a long position. Then I'll show you exactly what I mean. So here I'm doing the same exact movement. It's just now my leg is long as opposed to in a bent state. What I'm really thinking about is trying to keep that core connection. So I'm lifting and moving my leg through my core, not just by my leg itself. And this is the idea when it comes to that femur dropping down in. So there's the femur, and we're dropping it in, and we're keeping that connection to that pelvis. My bottom hand is that pelvis. We don't want any of that shearing or shifting motion. We want to really just try to drop that down as much as we can. So as I go into this, I really think about trying to use the weight of my leg to drop my femur deeper down into my hip socket. And this is going to help when it comes to any type of hip impingement that we have going on. Now from here to finish, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to bend my leg in and extend my leg long. This is going to be the same exact exercise that we did before, thinking about that wheel spinning clockwise and counterclockwise. But now I'm going to add a little bit more load by extending my leg fully out, having to keep that connection to my core as I come out through, and then bringing my leg back in. Now once I finish up with this sequence, I'm going to move on to the next sequence, which is going to be my glute bridges. Now for my glute bridges, the big thing I want to think about, I'm going to take that ball and I'm going to squeeze it in between my legs to start. Now I want to make sure that I have a good neutral position with my pelvis and that my feet are underneath me enough. I'm going to bend my elbows, bring my palms so that they're facing my head, and this is going to be my drive point. So from here, I'm going to drive into my hips, and I'm going to reach my knees away from my head. Now, if we start to feel that we get crampy on the hamstrings like I did here, that just means that my heels aren't close enough to my butt. As I bring my heels closer to my butt, it's going to be a whole heck of a lot easier to do that. Now, what we want to think about is as we're driving one hip down more than the other, we don't want the other hip to drop. So what I'm doing here is I'm driving that right one or I'm driving that left one, but I'm going to keep the opposite hip in a neutral place. So I'm going to drive up through. Now, if I want to lift that right leg, I'm going to drive into that right arm and that left leg, and that's going to be my cross position that's going to help me to stabilize through this. So as I switch sides, it's going to be the opposite. It's going to be the left arm and the right leg. So I'm driving into those 2 points, and then I'm going to lift up. Now, if I start to find that my hips collapse in, what I need to do is I need to lift up more through by reaching that knee away from my head. That's going to help me with starting to stabilize my pelvis on both sides. So once I do that, which is going to be helping with getting the more inside area of the glutes to fire, now I'm going to get the outside area of the glutes to fire. And this one you should find is a lot easier. So what we're going to do is we're going to place a band in between our thighs. We're going to keep our feet at hip width apart, and I'm going to go right back up into that same position I was just in. From here, I'm going to go into that same driving mechanics, right? So right arm, left leg, holding through there, coming back down, then left arm, right leg, lifting up that left leg. So it's always that cross position on the body.